My husband made fun of the dinner I carefully cooked, so he ate alone and slept alone too. I thought I was fighting to save my marriage, desperately trying to put the pieces back together. But one casual glance at a laptop screen showed me the truth, a truth so ugly, so utterly depraved, that it didn't just break my heart, it forged it into an unyielding weapon. And that's when I decided Vim Carvalho would lose absolutely everything. It was a Tuesday evening in February, the kind of cold, damp Portland night that makes you crave comfort. I'd spent 3 hours making Vim's favorite meal, slow-braised short ribs, perfectly roasted root vegetables, and my homemade sourdough. The house smelled incredible, warm and inviting, like the kind of home you see in magazines where families actually appreciate each other. I'd gone all out, wedding china, lit candles, even that burgundy dress he once said made me look beautiful. I was trying, desperately trying to salvage whatever was left of our 6-year marriage. Vim walked through the door at 7:30. He loosened his tie with one hand, scrolled through his phone with the other. He didn't look up. Didn't even glance around. Didn't smell the food. Didn't notice me. "Dinner's ready," I said, trying to keep my voice light, even as a familiar cold knot tightened in my stomach. He finally looked up, his gaze sweeping over the table, then me, then right back to his phone. "This is what you did all day?" Played housewife. He picked up a fork, stabbed a piece of meat, examined it like it was an alien specimen. "It's dry. How do you even mess up meat? My mother never served dry meat." I stood there, oven mitt still on, watching him push the plate away. 6 years. 6 years of marriage, and I had become invisible. Worse than invisible. I was his verbal punching bag, his maid, his mother substitute who could never measure up to the sainted, perpetually grumpy Mother Carvalho. "I followed the recipe exactly," I said quietly, a tremor in my voice. "It's been braising for 4 hours. He scoffed. "Maybe that's the problem. You follow recipes instead of actually knowing how to cook." He stood up, grabbed his laptop bag. "I'll order something edible. Don't wait up." He disappeared into his home office, that room that used to be our shared space before he claimed it entirely. Then I heard the click. The lock. That new lock, installed 3 months ago when he needed privacy for work calls. I looked at the table. The congealing food. The candles burning down. And at the woman I had become, small, apologetic, always trying to be enough for a man who had decided years ago that I never would be. But something was different this time. Instead of the usual tidal wave of tears, instead of numbly clearing the table and pretending tomorrow would be better, I smiled. A quiet, terrifying smile. Because 3 days ago, I'd borrowed Vim's laptop to print a document. And a notification had popped up. From someone named Isabella. With a preview that read, "Last night was amazing. Can't wait for your next business trip." I hadn't confronted him. Oh no. I had done something much, much smarter. I'd installed keylogger software on his laptop. The invisible kind. The kind that records everything, every password, every email, every disgusting message he thought was private. And in the 3 days since, I had learned exactly who my husband really was. I gathered the dishes silently, scraping his rejected meal into the trash. Then I went to our bedroom, removed every single item that belonged to him, clothes, toiletries, shoes, everything, and methodically moved them to the guest room. I changed the locks on our bedroom door. When he emerged from his office at midnight, looking for bed, he found his belongings in the spare room and a note on the door. It simply read, "Since you find everything about me inadequate, I thought you'd prefer your own space. Sleep well." I heard him try the handle. Heard him knock. Heard him call my name with increasing anger. I just put in my earbuds and went to sleep, listening to music. It was the most peaceful sleep I'd had in months. He didn't know it, but I had just started a timer. A very specific, very calculated timer that would end with him losing absolutely everything he valued. His job, his reputation, his comfortable life, his control over me. The next morning, I woke up to 17 text messages. They ranged from angry to apologetic to outright threatening. I deleted them all without reading past the first line. I made myself breakfast, Eggs Benedict with perfectly poached eggs and hollandaise sauce that didn't break, and ate it slowly, savoring every single bite. The silent treatment from my side lasted exactly 1 week. Vim swung wildly between rage and confusion. He couldn't understand why his usual pattern of insult, apologize, repeat wasn't working. What he didn't realize was that I was documenting everything while he spiraled. His laptop remained my goldmine. Every night, after he passed out from his third scotch, I would access the files remotely from my own computer. The keylogger was performing beautifully. I watched in real time as he typed messages to Isabella Moreno, a junior sales associate at his company. The affair had been going on for 7 months, coinciding exactly with when he started criticizing everything about me. But the affair was just the surface. What I found digging deeper made my blood run cold and my resolve turn to steel. He was having lunch meetings with his male colleagues where they rated women in the office on a scale of 1 to 10. I had screenshots of him calling his female boss incompetent, despite her MBA from Stanford. Messages where he bragged about making a pregnant employee cry by implying she was using her condition as an excuse for poor performance. An entire email chain mocking the company's diversity initiatives with jokes so vile I literally had to step away from my computer. My husband wasn't just a cheater, he was a systematic misogynist who had somehow kept this hidden from his progressive company's HR department. On day 8 of our new arrangement, my best friend Helena came over. She's a divorce attorney, though Vim had always dismissed her as that bitter single woman filling your head with feminist nonsense. Helena took one look at me and knew something had shifted. "You have that look," she said, settling onto my couch with the wine I poured. "The look that says someone's about to get destroyed." I showed her everything. The affair evidence, the workplace harassment documentation, the financial records I had been secretly copying. He'd been funneling money from our joint account into a separate one I wasn't supposed to know about, $15,000 over 2 years, taken in small increments he thought I wouldn't notice. Helena's expression went from sympathetic to absolutely predatory. "Teresa, this is better than I could have imagined. The evidence here isn't just divorce material. It's career-ending material." "I know," I said calmly. "That's exactly the point." She leaned forward. "What's your timeline?" "His company's annual gala is in 6 weeks, April 15th, I told her, pulling up the event details on my tablet. "It's the biggest event of the year. All the executives, major clients, even some press for the industry awards. Vim's been bragging for months about being nominated for Sales Director of the Year." "You want to go nuclear at a public event?" Helena wasn't asking, she was confirming. "I want to go thermonuclear." She grinned. "I'll start drawing up the divorce papers. We'll have everything ready to file immediately after. Washington is a no-fault state, but this evidence means you'll get everything you're entitled to, and more." Over the next 2 weeks, Vim actually started trying to win me back. He bought flowers, attempted apologies, even cooked dinner once. Takeout, of course, plated on our dishes, thinking I wouldn't notice the restaurant containers in the trash. I accepted it all with polite distance, neither forgiving nor escalating. I needed him comfortable, not suspicious. Meanwhile, I was building my case like a prosecutor preparing for trial. I created a dedicated, encrypted cloud folder. Every email to Isabella saved, every sexist message cataloged, every financial transaction documented with bank statements. I even recorded his drunk rants when he came home from bars with his colleagues, his phone innocently on the counter, capturing every slurred insult about women in the workplace. My friend Clara from college worked at Vim's company in a different department. I met her for coffee and casually mentioned I was worried about Vim's stress levels. Did she know if everything was okay at work? She leaned in conspiratorially. "Between you and me, there's been talk. Some of the women in sales are uncomfortable around him and his lunch group. Nothing formal yet, but HR has been asking questions." Perfect. The foundation was already cracking. I just needed to create the earthquake. I also discovered Vim had been telling Isabella that we were separated, that I was mentally unstable, that he was only staying in the house until the divorce finalized. He had painted himself as the victim of a troubled marriage to justify his affair. The manipulation was so complete, so calculated, that any remaining guilt I might have felt evaporated entirely. 3 weeks before the gala, Vim actually asked me to attend with him. It would look good, he said. For my image, a united front. I smiled sweetly. Of course, honey. I'd love to support you. His relief was palpable. He even hugged me, the first physical contact in weeks. I felt nothing but cold satisfaction. That night, after he fell asleep in the guest room he had reluctantly accepted as his domain, I finalized my plan. Helena had the divorce papers ready. I had contacted Francisco Manes, Vim's boss, requesting a private meeting the day after the gala under the guise of planning a surprise for Vim. His assistant had confirmed the appointment. I had also done something Vim would never suspect. I had befriended Isabella on social media using a fake account, posing as a woman in sales interested in joining their company. She had been remarkably open, sharing photos from her business trips with my husband, complaining about keeping their relationship secret, even admitting she felt guilty about him being married, but believing his lies about our separation. Everything was in place. The dominoes were lined up. All I needed was to push the first one. The morning of April 15th arrived with unseasonably warm weather, the kind of spring day that makes Portland feel almost cheerful. I woke early, went for a run, and spent the afternoon getting ready with the calm focus of someone preparing for battle. I had bought a new dress, burgundy silk that hugged every curve, elegant, but undeniably attention-grabbing. Professional hair and makeup, the diamond earrings Vim had given me for our 5th anniversary, back when he still pretended to care. I looked devastating, and I knew it. When Vim saw me, something flickered in his eyes. Maybe regret, maybe possessiveness, maybe just surprise that I had made an effort. "You look incredible," he said. And for a moment, he sounded like the man I had married. "Thank you," I replied neutrally. "We should leave soon." The gala was held at a downtown hotel ballroom. Chandeliers and champagne and 200 people from Portland's tech industry. Vim immediately began working the room, introducing me to colleagues with his hand proprietarily on my lower back. I smiled and played the supportive wife perfectly, mentally cataloging faces and names. I spotted Isabella across the room in a black cocktail dress, her eyes tracking Vim with barely concealed longing. She didn't know I knew. Nobody did. Francisco Manes approached us, a distinguished man in his 50s with silver hair and the easy confidence of someone who had built his success on actual merit. "Vim, excellent to see you. And this must be the famous Teresa. Your husband talks about you constantly." "Nothing but good things, I hope," I said with a practiced laugh. "Always." Francisco smiled warmly. "I'm looking forward to our meeting Monday morning, by the way. Your idea for a surprise recognition sounds wonderful." Vim's head snapped toward me. "What meeting?" "Oh, I wanted it to be a surprise," I said, touching his arm affectionately. "I reached out to Francisco about doing something special for you at the office. Recognition for all your hard work." The suspicion in Vim's eyes faded, replaced by pleased vanity. "You didn't have to do that." "I wanted to," I said, and it was the only honest thing I had said to him in weeks. Dinner was served. Some chicken dish that Vim ate while criticizing the sauce to the people at our table. I noticed several women exchange glances, the kind of look that said they'd heard this act before. I filed away their reactions. Then came the awards. Several categories were announced. People applauded. Executives gave speeches. Finally, they reached Sales Director of the Year. 3 nominees, including Vim. He sat up straighter, adjusting his tie. The award went to someone else, a woman named Patricia from the Seattle office. Vim's face went rigid with barely suppressed rage. He clapped mechanically, but I could see his jaw clenching. As soon as the ceremony concluded, and people began mingling again, he downed his drink and grabbed another from a passing waiter. "Rigged," he muttered. "Diversity higher." This was the Vim his colleagues occasionally glimpsed, but that he usually hid behind charm. I watched several people near us register his comment, uncomfortable expressions appearing. "Good." He kept drinking. By 9 o'clock, he was on his 5th scotch, his filter dissolving. When Isabella tried to approach, he waved her off irritably, too angry about losing the award to maintain their secret carefully. She retreated, hurt and confused. I excused myself to the restroom, where I sent 3 emails from my phone. The first was to Francisco, confirming our Monday meeting and attaching a preview document titled Concerns Regarding Workplace Culture. The second was to Helena, with one word, go. The third was to myself, a backup of everything stored on my phone just in case. When I returned, Vim was in an animated conversation with 2 other men from his lunch group, voices just slightly too loud. I positioned myself nearby, sipping champagne and pretending to check my phone while actually recording audio. Can't believe they gave it to Patricia. Woman's been there half as long, done half the work. You know how it is now. Everything's about checking boxes. My wife can barely manage dinner, but sure, let's promote women to executive positions based on. I hit stop on the recording, added it to my evidence folder, and smiled at an acquaintance who passed by. By 10:30, Vim was drunk enough that I suggested we leave. He didn't argue, stumbling slightly as we walked to the parking garage. I had volunteered to drive, anticipating exactly this scenario. On the drive home, he ranted about the award, about office politics, about how he did everything right and still got passed over, about how the world was changing in ways he couldn't stand. I let him talk, the recording app on my phone capturing every slurred word from the cup holder where it sat innocently. You don't understand, Teresa. You work from home. You don't see what it's like out there now. Can't say anything. Can't have standards. Everything's offensive. That sounds frustrating, I said neutrally. Damn right it's frustrating. I bust my ass while people like Patricia get handed promotions for being. He caught himself. Some drunk instinct warning him not to complete that sentence, even to me. When we got home, he headed straight for the guest room, too drunk and angry to notice me smiling in the darkness of the hallway. Monday morning, I woke up early, dressed in my most professional outfit, and drove to Vim's office building. He had already left for the day, heading in early to prove his dedication. Francisco's assistant showed me to his office promptly at 9 o'clock. He stood to greet me, handshake firm, expression welcoming but curious. Teresa, thank you for coming in. I have to admit, your email this weekend intrigued me. You mentioned concerns about workplace culture. I sat down, opened my laptop, and began the systematic destruction of my husband's career. Francisco, what I'm about to show you is difficult, but necessary. I discovered this information accidentally, and my conscience won't let me stay silent. I turned the laptop to face him. This is documentation of ongoing harassment, discrimination, and conduct that violates your company's stated values and almost certainly several employment laws. I watched his expression change as he scrolled through the evidence, the emails, the messages, the ratings of female colleagues, the mockery of diversity initiatives, the affair with a subordinate that could be considered abuse of power dynamics. His face went from confused to concerned to furious in the span of 5 minutes. How long has this been happening? His voice was ice. Based on the evidence, at least 2 years actively, possibly longer. I pulled up more files. I've organized it chronologically. I've also included audio from Saturday night, where you can hear him and colleagues making discriminatory statements at a company event. Francisco listened for 30 seconds before stopping the playback. This is more than enough. Teresa, I need to ask, why are you bringing this to me instead of directly to him? I met his eyes steadily. Because Vim has spent years making me feel small, making me question my worth, criticizing everything I do while secretly being exactly the kind of person he accused me of being inadequate. I tried to fix our marriage. I tried to be enough. And then I realized I was never the problem. He was. You're divorcing him? The papers are being filed today. But more than that, I need him to face real consequences for his actions. Not just losing me. Losing the career he values more than anything. The reputation he's built on charm and manipulation. Everything. Francisco was quiet for a long moment. Then he picked up his phone. Janet, please ask HR Director Thomas to come to my office immediately. Cancel my morning meetings and find Carvalho. Tell him I need to see him at 11 o'clock. He hung up and looked at me. I'm going to be honest with you, Teresa. What you've brought me is grounds for immediate termination. It's also potentially grounds for legal action from the employees he's harassed. This will be handled today. Good, I said simply. I waited in a conference room while Francisco and the HR director reviewed everything in detail. Through the glass wall, I could see the increasing gravity of their expressions. Other executives were called in. Legal was consulted. The machinery of corporate accountability began grinding forward with surprising speed. At 10:45, I saw Vim walk past the conference room toward Francisco's office. He looked confident, probably assuming he was being called in for some routine matter. He didn't see me sitting in the shadows. I couldn't hear what was being said, but I didn't need to. I watched through the window as body language changed. Confusion, defensiveness, anger, denial. His hands gesturing emphatically, his face red. At one point, he stood up, pointing at someone. Security was called in. 2 officers who stood by the door. 40 minutes later, Vim emerged, escorted by security, carrying a small box of his personal items. His face was ashen, his tie loosened, his confident posture completely collapsed. He looked 10 years older than he had that morning. As they passed the conference room, his eyes met mine through the glass. The recognition hit him like a physical blow. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. I didn't smile, didn't gloat, just held his gaze with perfect calm as he was walked past. Francisco appeared at the conference room door. He's been terminated effective immediately. HR is preparing documentation and legal is reviewing whether to pursue formal complaints on behalf of affected employees. Several women have already come forward with additional complaints. Once they learned there was an investigation. Thank you for taking this seriously. Thank you for bringing it to our attention. I'm sorry you had to be the one to do it. He paused. For what it's worth, the surprise recognition you mentioned, it made him lower his guard completely. Smart. I gathered my things. As I walked through the lobby, I passed Isabella coming in for her shift. She looked at me, recognition dawning on her face from the gala photos on Vim's desk. Her expression was complicated, guilt, confusion, fear. I stopped. He told you we were separated, didn't he? I said quietly. She nodded, tears forming. We weren't. We aren't. Not until today, when my divorce papers get filed. I kept my voice neutral, not angry. He lied to both of us. The difference is, I'm not the one who will have to explain to HR why I was sleeping with a married supervisor. I left her standing there and walked out into the spring sunshine. By the time I got home, Helena had texted, papers filed. He's been served at his office. This is going to be the easiest divorce I've ever handled. I spent the afternoon changing all the locks, all the passwords, and moving the last of Vim's belongings to the porch in sealed boxes. Our joint account? I had already drained that morning, transferring my half plus the $15,000 he had stolen into my personal account. Helena had insisted on documenting everything for the divorce proceedings. Vim arrived at 3 o'clock, escorted by a police officer. He had called them, claiming I was illegally keeping him from his home. I met them at the door with documentation showing the house was in both names, but I had every right to change locks during a divorce proceeding. The officer, a woman in her 40s, looked over the paperwork and then at Vim with thinly veiled disgust. Sir, your belongings are here. The house is shared property, so you'll need to work out temporary living arrangements through your attorneys. I suggest you take your items and go. This is insane. Teresa, what the hell did you do? You ruined my life. Vim's voice cracked. No, I said calmly. You ruined your own life. I just documented it. You vindictive, he started toward me, but the officer stepped between us. Sir, I strongly suggest you take your things and leave. Now. He grabbed 2 boxes, threw them in his car, and peeled out of the driveway. He'd be back for the rest, but I had already arranged for everything to be put in storage at his expense. That evening, my phone exploded with messages, from Vim, ranging from apologetic to threatening to desperate, from his mother, demanding to know what I had done to her son, from mutual friends who had heard rumors and wanted the truth. I ignored all of them except Helena, who confirmed that Vim's attorney had already been in touch, trying to negotiate terms. He wants the house. Helena reported, incredulous. After everything, he actually thinks he has leverage to demand the house. What did you tell them? I sent them a preview of our evidence file and suggested they advise their client to accept whatever terms we offer or we start making things public. I slept that night in my bedroom, our bedroom that had become mine alone, with the windows open and the sound of rain starting to fall. No angry presence in the house. No criticism waiting in the morning. Just silence and peace and the satisfaction of knowing I had taken back control. But I wasn't finished. Not even close. The divorce proceedings moved with remarkable speed. Once Vim's attorney saw the full extent of evidence Helena presented, the affair, the financial manipulation, the documented pattern of emotional abuse, it painted a picture that made fighting for anything an exercise in futility. Within 6 weeks, we had a settlement. I kept the house. I kept my full portion of retirement accounts. I kept the car I primarily drove. Vim got his belongings, his car, and the shame of a divorce where he had no moral high ground whatsoever. But the professional destruction was far more satisfying than the divorce. Word spread through Portland's tech industry faster than I could have orchestrated myself. Vim's termination became an open secret. Several women from his former company filed formal complaints with the state labor board. Isabella, in an attempt to save her own career, cooperated fully with HR and confirmed details about their affair, inadvertently providing more evidence of Vim's pattern of manipulation. He was unhireable in his field. I knew this because mutual connections told me he had applied to 17 different companies in 2 months. Every application dead-ended once references were checked. His reputation preceded him. 3 months after our divorce finalized, I ran into Francisco at a coffee shop downtown. He greeted me warmly, asked how I was doing, and then said something that made my entire strategy feel validated. You should know, we've completely restructured our sales division. Mandatory harassment training, anonymous reporting systems, new oversight for manager-subordinate relationships. Patricia is heading up the initiative. He smiled. Your evidence didn't just end one man's career. It changed an entire company culture. I learned through Helena that Vim had moved back in with his mother in the suburbs, taking a low-level sales job at a furniture store for 1/3 of his previous salary. Gree, who had always treated me with barely concealed contempt, had been given the full truth by her son, his version, where I was a bitter, vindictive woman who destroyed him for no reason. But Gree made the mistake of calling Helena's office to yell at me, and Helena, being Helena, calmly informed her of every documented detail of her son's behavior. The call ended in silence. 6 months post-divorce, I was thriving. My consulting business had grown significantly, freed from the emotional drain of my marriage. I had energy and focus I hadn't felt in years. I took on better clients, raised my rates, and even hired an assistant. The house, fully mine, became a space I actually loved instead of a place I simply existed in. I started dating again, cautiously but optimistically. I joined a book club. I took a pottery class. I did all the things Vim had mocked as middle-aged woman cliches and discovered I genuinely enjoyed them. My friend Clara from Vim's old company reached out with an update I hadn't expected. You need to know what happened to Isabella, she said over lunch. She resigned. She couldn't handle the judgment after everything came out. But before she left, she came to me and asked me to thank you. Thank me. She said you saved her from wasting years on a man who would have destroyed her the way he tried to destroy you. That seeing his true character documented so clearly made her realize what she had been willing to accept. I didn't know how to feel about that. I hadn't done it for Isabella. But if she learned something, that was her own journey. Meanwhile, Vim's social media presence, once full of humble bragging about sales achievements and luxury purchases, had gone silent. His last post was from the week before his termination, a picture of his office view with some quote about success. The comments were now disabled. Through the grapevine, I heard he had started therapy, not because he recognized his issues, but because his mother insisted after his second DUI arrest. Even his drinking had escalated, a coping mechanism that was becoming its own problem. I felt no pity. None. A year after everything imploded, I was at a professional networking event when I saw him across the room. He had gained weight, lost hair, and carried himself with the defeated posture of someone who had fallen and couldn't get back up. He was there with his furniture store manager, trying desperately to make connections in an industry that had blacklisted him. Our eyes met. He looked away first. I continued my conversation with a potential client worth 6 figures. My laughter genuine, my confidence unshakable. That evening, Helena called. "You'll appreciate this. Vim's attorney contacted me today. He's asking if you would be willing to provide a reference letter for his security clearance application. Apparently, he's trying for some government sales position." "What did you tell them?" "I told them that any reference from you would be honest, which means it would document exactly why he's unemployable in any position requiring integrity." They withdrew the request. I poured myself a glass of wine, sat on my back porch, and watched the sunset paint the Portland sky in shades of orange and pink. Tomorrow, I had a consultation with a major tech firm about overhauling their marketing strategy. Next week, I had a date with a kind, respectful man I had met at the book club. Next month, I was taking a trip to Italy, something I had always wanted to do, but Vim had dismissed as a waste of money. My life wasn't just good, it was exactly what I deserved. And Vim? He was getting exactly what he deserved, too. 2 years after the divorce, I received an unexpected message on LinkedIn. It was from Patricia, the woman who had won Sales Director of the Year over Vim that night at the gala. "Teresa, I hope this doesn't overstep boundaries, but I wanted you to know something. The culture shift at our company started because of what you did. We now have 3 women in executive positions. Anonymous reporting that actually works. And we lost 12 men who decided they didn't want to work somewhere with all these rules. Good riddance to them. You changed lives you'll never meet." "Thank you." I read it 3 times, then saved it in a folder I kept labeled reminders. Vim's trajectory continued its downward spiral. He lasted 8 months at the furniture store before being let go for inappropriate comments to a female coworker. His mother finally kicked him out after he showed up drunk at her house at 2 o'clock in the morning, screaming about how everyone had betrayed him. He ended up in a studio apartment in a rough neighborhood, living on unemployment while trying to reinvent himself as some kind of men's rights podcaster. I heard about it from mutual friends who watched in horrified fascination. His podcast lasted 11 episodes before being removed from platforms for violating harassment policies. His subscriber count never broke 300, mostly bots and trolls. His attempts to position himself as a victim of cancel culture fell flat because the documentation of his behavior was too extensive, too specific, too damning. I never listened to a single episode. I didn't need to. Meanwhile, my life expanded in ways I hadn't imagined possible. My consulting firm now had 4 employees. I bought a small cabin in the mountains as a weekend retreat. I was in a healthy, equal relationship with someone who appreciated my cooking, valued my intelligence, and treated me like a partner instead of a servant. I ran into Gry once at a grocery store. She looked older, beaten down by the reality of what her son had become. She started to say something, then just shook her head and walked away. I felt a flicker of something. Not pity, exactly, but an acknowledgement that she was collateral damage of her son's choices. Still, she had spent years enabling his entitlement, criticizing me, treating her son's behavior as acceptable. She had made her choices, too. 3 years post-divorce, I got a call from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Teresa?" Vim's voice, hoarse and smaller than I remembered. "I know I have no right to call. I wanted to say I'm sorry for everything. You were right about all of it. I'm in AA now. Part of the steps is making amends. I don't expect forgiveness. I just needed you to know that I finally understand what I did to you, how I treated you. I was awful." "Yes," I said simply. "You were. Is there anything I can do? Any way to make this right?" "No, Vim, there isn't. You can't give me back the years I spent trying to be good enough for someone who had already decided I never would be. You can't undo the damage you did to your career, to those women you harassed, to our marriage. What you can do is live with the consequences of your choices and hopefully become someone better for whoever comes after me. But that has nothing to do with me anymore." "I understand. I just wanted you to know I'm sorry." "Noted. Don't call this number again." I hung up and blocked the number immediately. That evening, my partner asked if I was okay. I realized I was more than okay. His apology hadn't given me closure. I had already closed that door myself years ago. His words changed nothing about my life or my happiness. He was irrelevant. 5 years after everything ended, I was featured in a local business magazine for my consulting firm's success. The article mentioned in passing that I had navigated a difficult divorce before building my company. A reporter had tried to get more details, but I declined. The past is past, I told her. I'm only interested in talking about the future. But privately, I sometimes thought about that night at the gala, about the woman in the burgundy dress who smiled and played her role perfectly while holding the nuclear codes to her husband's entire existence. About how fear and anger and hurt had crystallized into cold, calculated strategy. I didn't regret a single second of it. Some people say revenge is empty, that it doesn't bring happiness. Those people have never executed it perfectly. They've never watched someone who systematically diminished them lose everything while they walk away stronger, richer, and infinitely happier. Vim lost his career, his reputation, his marriage, his home, and his dignity. I gained freedom, success, peace, and the unshakable knowledge that I was never the problem. The best revenge isn't living well. It's living extraordinarily while the person who tried to destroy you can barely survive. It's building an empire from the ashes of a relationship where you were told you were worthless. It's proving definitively and permanently that you were always the better person, the smarter strategist, the one who deserved everything you achieved. I never forgave him. I never will. Forgiveness would imply he deserved grace he never earned. Instead, I moved forward, built something beautiful and occasionally, very occasionally, allowed myself a moment of satisfaction remembering the look on his face when he realized I had won. That was enough.